Hello forensic accountants, this is our review of chapter 5. So, in the earlier chapters we talked about the overview tests such as histogram, periodic graph, data profile and the like. Benford's law was one of those high-level overview tests, and this is pretty much how we're going to end our Benford's law tests, namely with a test of the number duplications, and we're going to have a look at the last two digits of the numbers, if that seems to be a relevant test. Now, the number duplication test is simply a test which tells us which numbers occurred most frequently. So we're going to count how many times each number occurred, and it's going to be something like a numbers hit parade. It's going to tell me, amongst other things, which numbers caused, which were the sort of main reasons for these larger spikes on the first two-digit graph. So our largest spike here looks to be at 50, 47 and 24, and the number duplication test is linked to it. It will tell us which numbers were most responsible for that. Well, in the purchasing card transactions we can see that $4.75 occurred most of the time. It has the highest count, and so this is basically the cause of the spike at 47. I would just want to know what this is all about. It's probably not a fraud, it's too small, but I want to know why this number in particular is occurring so many times. The $50 is the cause of the, and the 500 here, of the spike at 50, and I'd like to know what these transactions are, especially the 500 here. The 24 doesn't really appear on this list, so what that tells me is that it was a whole host of different numbers, but a lot of them, that caused the spike at 24. These round numbers seem to be rather strange for purchasing card transactions, except for this one. They all end in 00, and this is, I find this odd for purchasing card transactions. So, which items to investigate? I have a number of suggestions here, and basically you need to have a look at this list and adapt it to whatever data set you're looking for. But this is the sort of main criteria, the amounts that are linked to the large positive spikes on the first two-digit graph. Which numbers cause these? And let me have a look a little closer at them. So I have other suggestions here. Processing inefficiencies. This would be if I was doing an accounts payable audit and I wanted to know whether we were paying numbers in an inefficient way, where we could rather do something like summary billing or something like that. Now, if we go back to this example, we see the spike at 99. Numbers that begin with 99 are coming in just below some threshold, and what I did was I extracted the large numbers that begin with 99 in this data set, and this makes for extremely interesting reading because this is a purchasing card. So these numbers just below the threshold of $100,000 were used for purchasing cards, and we can see hotel, we can see a tree service here, and indeed if you read the chapter you will see that these were associated with certain emergency expenditures. This was a real fraud case. I looked at the credits allowed by the company to its various customers. These were the credits. I get the spike at 99. I ran the number duplication test, and I saw some large numbers, a kilowatt hour is worth about 10 cents, large numbers being credited to customer accounts. And the way that this fraud worked was that the employees would credit customer accounts, and the customers would in turn have to pay less, and they would thank the employee with something that we could be calling a kickback. This is where the number duplication test helps. If we go back to the previous chapter, we looked at the numbers in the accounting textbooks, and if I just look at the first digit graph, everything looks neat. It looks pretty good. In fact, it looks better than some real data sets with absolutely no fraud either. So these are invented numbers. The authors thought them up. They put them in the accounting textbooks. And quite amazingly, the first digits followed Benford's law very well. We could look at this and say, oh, the whole data set follows Benford's law, but not so fast. When we look at the number duplications, we can see that the most frequently used numbers are all big and round. That wasn't apparent from the first digit graph. It's only when we run the first two-digit graph that we can actually see this phenomenon coming through. So if I just did the first digits, I'd miss this. If I did the first digits and the number duplication, it would then tell me I have the round numbers. Or if I did the first two digits, this graph would tell me both stories. This is an interesting case. This is Michelle Higson, and this was a petty cash fraud scheme. She made checks out to cash and petty cash. She cashed them and kept the cash. And if we run the number duplication test here, we can see that she reused certain numbers. And this is very odd for a petty cash scheme. In general, the way the Impress system works is that the amount for the check should be equal to the disbursements for the previous 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. These number duplications should have been extremely odd. Interestingly, she ran the scheme in 2014. She was convicted in 2017. She went to prison for 3 months in September of 2017. And here we have a new case dated 2020. You can see that the new sentencing is set for July 14th, 2020. And what this is all about is, while she was working as the part-time bookkeeper for the one company, and while she got sentenced in 2017, she was also the part-time bookkeeper for another company. And from that company, the fraud in 2017 amounted to $146,000. And in 2018, after the prison sentence, even some more. So it is difficult to understand how this company could not have known that their part-time bookkeeper had actually been sentenced and served a 3-year prison sentence for fraud without knowing that, and the fact that they were being defrauded too. More about it in the chapter. The last two-digit test. I like this test. It is a powerful test for number invention, and it's worked quite well on things like election results, inventory counts, car odometer readings, and the like. All I want to do is look at the last 2 digits. This is the purchasing car transactions, and these are the last 2 digits being the cents. And we can see that more than 1/3 of the numbers end in 00. Quite odd. 50 coming in second place, and 99 in the ending place. I have a few examples. This was somebody that obtained the credit cards and then pretended that the real owner of the card had walked in to their bar and spent this amount of money over a 3-month period, and I think we have about 50 transactions here. The last digit is quite amazingly more than half the time either an 8 or a 9. So it is interesting that people they sort of leave a fingerprint as such. This was the case of the accountant of the nightclubs up in Connecticut, and what she did was she diverted some cash from the cash sales for her own use, and indeed these are the deposits to her personal bank account. And if we look at these numbers, 2 things jump out. Number 1, they are round, and number 2, frequently they are just below the threshold of 10,000 for the currency transaction report. So more about that in the chapter. R can be used to run the number duplication test. It does a pretty good job, and I like to use it. It's also quite fast. So this is a nice learning experience running this in R, and it helps you get familiar with that piece of software. So the number test drills down to find the source of the spikes. For the last 2 digits, we're looking for number invention and rounding. And I talk about the 3 cases: the electric utility, the kickbacks, the bookkeeper with the petty cash, the bar owner who liked to use the 8 and 9 as the ending digits, and Lynn the accountant who made deposits to a personal bank account that were multiples of 100 and just below the reporting threshold.